Hey, this is Don Reese again here with RealCraft, and today we're in our RealCraft showroom. It'll be a little bit noisy and it's a little bit crowded, but we're going to attempt to put up a mantle today. We're making mantles, and this will make it pretty easy and a beautiful addition to your home. And we want to show you how to do it to make it simple and easy. So first off, I'd like to show you the tools we need. Okay, let's kind of go over some of the tools that you're going to need. Obviously, I need a level. The longer the better if you're doing a particularly long shelf. 4 foot, a lot of people have a 4-foot level, and that really helps. Over here, there's a couple of stud sensors. This is, I prefer, but all kinds of people have whatever to help you find the stud. Once you think you've found the stud, then I have a hammer here and a nail, because often I will want to punch to make sure I'm in the center of a stud. So I'm showing a nail and a hammer here. Obviously a tape measure. Here are some screws I want a minimum of 2.5 inch depth to make sure that I'm at least 1 1/4 into a stud. And I've got obviously a marker. I like a Sharpie, it works really well. I use blue tape so that I don't damage the wall. And obviously I have a screwdriver, screw gun here, taken from the shop. And I have a screw gun with a drill that is sized reasonably well to the screws. And that's pretty much all I need for setting up a mantle. It's a relatively easy operation, easy for a do-it-yourselfer. Okay, here we have a mantle. Today, this is a hickory mantle made out of hickory. It has some stain on it that we've done in-house. And it is 8 feet long, and this is what we're gonna anchor today. Now, I kind of want to point out some of the quality features that you kind of get that we insist on a RealCraft mantle. This is hollow. It's not a full beam, which would be extremely heavy, depending on what you're anchoring to. What we've done here is we have joints here and back here at the end. We bring them all together so that you're not seeing the ends of this board or anything. They're all brought together crisp. Let's open this up so you can see the hollow nature of this thing. Here you have the inside, you can see. And here we basically have a French cleat setup here. So either side can be put up, either side can be put on. And this here is what will receive it. And this here is what we're gonna anchor to the wall. So I think we'll move forward and we'll go do the install, and we'll get this mounted to the wall, and then we'll bring this in and put it on. Here we've established, the salespeople here have determined this is where they want the top of the mantle. And I've determined the center of the wall, so this is going to be centered right here. So we're going to look to establish this level line to the left and to the right. And so in order to do that, we'll be using this trusty 4-foot level that we hope everyone has access to. So today we're going to put on about an 8-foot mantle. So it'll extend quite far. So first, what I do is I'm going to come out here and help establish a level line that gives me a good guide. And then I'm using a Sharpie mostly so that you can see it there on camera. Because when I use a pencil, I can see it, but you can't see it. So there, I've got the bubble looking pretty good. So I'm good in that direction. The bubbles are right in the middle. So I'm gonna mark it right there. So that's probably the first thing to do. Second thing to do is I'm going to want to find the studs. So I have approximate this and a little bit farther, so I want to get started. Here I'm using a stud sensor. I like this one or this kind of model better than others because it'll help me identify each side of the stud. Now I know I have a lot of mechanics in this wall, and so I'm expecting to get some possible confusion, and then we're going to confirm this. This wall is a typical 16 inches on center, which is typical spacing for interior walls. It's finding some electrical, which so we're going to test these, make sure that they are approximately 16 inches apart, which would tell me that is, this is, this is, this is. So that's a pretty good indication that I found it. Now I'm going to determine where out farther I may need, because we're doing kind of a long mantle today. You may need a 4 foot or 5 foot, and this is fine typically for that. This is the top of a mantle. Our standard mantle will be 10 inches wide, 6 inches tall, and then for an extra upcharge, you can go wider, you can go taller, so that it can be deeper. Now, this is maybe a good time to indicate, if you're putting this on a blank wall, obviously you can put it wherever you want to. If you're putting it above a wood stove or a fireplace, then you'll want to check with your local codes and the information that comes with your particular stove in terms of the clearance above it, so that you don't have an overheating fire hazard. Typically over a fireplace that doesn't stick out, it'll be 16 to 18 inches of clearance above that spot, but you're going to want to check with if you've got an insert or something that is sticking out and what the local codes, because they will vary. But okay, here we don't have a fireplace or anything underneath, but we are going to set this here for display. So I'm going to measure the mantle so that I know that I'm reaching. What I'm wanting to do is to connect to the maximum amount of studs, because that will increase the holding power of the weight that it can carry. The minimum you would ever want would obviously be 2. And here we're going to get ready to set this out. We're going to find some more studs, and this is the mantle itself is 8 foot. This is a little shy of 8 foot. So I've measured 4 feet. I've measured from the other end 4 feet, and this becomes the center. I kind of like to do it this way because it just makes it easier with less math and measuring the whole thing and dividing by 2. So I come out 4 foot to this mark, 4 foot to this mark, and then it's easy for me to find the center. And so I'm going to come back here, lay a little more tape out so that we can find some more studs, and then we'll get started on the final setting of this so that we can drop the mantle. I want to get out here to the maximum. If there's any stud that I can get inside the mantle, I want to make sure that I can make contact with it because it'll just add that much more strength. It would be easy to say, oh, I got the main ones and that is fine, but it's really not fine. We want to do a quality job, and that's the way we're going to do it. So what's nice about this, I tend to see the whole stud. Okay, now if you have a different kind of stud sensor and it indicates you're on a stud, you may want to punch a nail in the area so that you know you're on the stud, because you don't want to be driving a fastener really close to the edge of a stud, because you're just not going to get the strength that you would get if you're right in the center. This type of stud sensor will give us the left and the right so that we're more assured that we're on it, that when we put a fastener in, and I'm going to check again here, that yes, we're pretty much 16 inches on center. So we should be good if we can hit the middle of those marks. Now, I have marked already the center of the wall here, and so I'm going to basically match center up to center up, and then I can mark some studs. And we're going to pre-drill for the screws here. So I'll just proceed to that right now. This is a French cleat, so I'm setting up the wall on this side, and this will be outside so that the mantle will come down and basically lay in here and be locked in. And so this is the side that we're going to be working on and our marks. So I will proceed with that, make a little room here. I don't want to be up too high because I want to reach the wall and leave some room. I want to have a minimum 2 good screws into each stud, and I'm using 2.5 inches. I want to be in significantly into the stud. I don't want to be in so long that I'm hitting plumbing or wiring that might be going through the middle of the stud, as that's always a bit of a risk. But I want to get a good solid connection if I'm going to get good use, good contact, and the maximum ability to hold weight. Okay, here we're going to kind of clean up the backside so we don't have something holding us away from the wall. Now, something to bring up here, I guess, would be a detail, is if your wall isn't flat, in other words, if your wall has dips, has a dip, then you may find that, we're going to put this up here, you may find that you need to put a shim back behind so that this is straight, because if this is going in and out on the wall, then it's going to make it hard for the mantle, because it's made in the shop and it's made straight, and you may need to back this up and stick some shims if you have an unusual dip. Flat walls, it's really common in a house or any kind of American framing with stud walls for there to be studs. As they dry out, they kind of will bow and they will dip. That's really common and not something to be unexpected. So I think we'll get some screws here and get this started. Note, we have our mark here for what's level. We have a mark here, so we have a guide to know that we're on our marks. So let me get a screw gun and some screws, and we will get our first connection, in which case we can work our way down. Now here I've got a 2.5 inch construction screw, Phillips, and here you can figure this is 3/4 of an inch, there's a 1/2 inch, there's 1 1/4 inches, and I'm getting in another 1 1/4 inches into the stud. So that may be a little longer, but this would be a minimum thickness for that I would want to see. So we're going to kind of set this here. Now we're going to go ahead and mount our French cleat. Why it's called French, I don't know. So I'm going to get down. This is a little harder to look at the lines because you have to look at it horizontally, because you're looking down the French cleat and you could be off. So I have my center lined up with my center, pretty much with the studs that we've marked out. We're going to just and I'm still looking good. I think I've got a metal plate there. So this appears that I have a metal plate in the wall because there's resistance to going in. So we will try this down a little lower, and we might have to pre-drill this. I'll come back to this. But we will come over here. So we're going to come over here. And I'm going in just enough through the board. This one we might try. And I only want to go through the board. I don't want to bury all the way down into the wood below. That would kind of lessen the strength that I would get. If I'm going into solid wood, then I might have to consider that. Okay, we've got good connection there. As I talked about before that I want the wall flat, this is a good time to see if my cleat, if the wall is nice and flat. And it looks like it's within tolerance that it'd work just fine. I've certainly, when I was framing houses before the sheetrockers would come in, I would often come along on studs in the middle and look for studs that were bowed out or bowed in, because it makes a big difference with a sheetrock job. I I did the framing in our offices here, and so I already did that. Looks like I did a relatively good job, because if I had a dip, again, if I have a high point, I'm going to end up having to go by that high point. So if this was dipped in, I would have to come in and put a shim or a washer or something under there so that this would be nice and straight. So looks like we're good, that we can go ahead and proceed. So at this point, we're going to mark maybe the center. If we really want this accurate, we know where our center is. So if I mark the center, put some tape on the mantle so I'm on the center, then the first hit will hit right where I want to. But obviously there's some adjustment to be had there. Most of this tape can now come off. We've made that's done its usefulness. I really like using blue tape because it really can help preserve the walls, preserve mess or any kind of cleanup. There, I kind of clean it, and I might just take a little piece of this just to mark the center, and then I can take the rest of this tape off. This is 8-foot mantle, so this is relatively simple. But obviously, I'm going to just lay tape right down here at the 4-foot mark so that while I'm working, setting this down, I can line this up with the tape. Simple, but helpful, I think. So this is basically up. Now this is a narrower and deeper mantle than is typical. But people have needs for different things. This is going into the showroom, so they wanted a relatively shallow and deep. And a lot of people, that's the kind of mantle they want, and we're totally fine with that. So this works well for the showroom, so this is what we're going to put in today. You know, this is relatively heavy, and you know, you might need a helper in your own home. Okay, so here I'm basically going to lift it on the wall. My tapes are lined up, and that is basically it. I'm getting good contact. I've got my centers there, and here we have established a mantle. We could check it for level, which case, you know, if the wall is weird, you might not have it all the way down. But here we've got the bubble in the center right where we want it, and we're good. So now another choice someone might have, particularly if one is coming out wider, is to go in here and put a screw down, and we'll probably do that in this case. Run a little trim screw or something down here that will more permanently connect the mantle to the French cleat underneath. And that's a good way to go. You can always get at that screw later and undo it, and then when one wants to take the mantle down in the future. But anyway, this is a mantle done in hickory, 6 inches deep or wide, and 10 inches of vertical. And there you have it. Thanks for joining us here at RealCraft. Again, this is Don Reese, and we'll see you next time.